Well, it's a wonderful life for the Rams and Broncos, who already have sealed playoff spots. Many teams know they will be spending the postseason home alone, and there are a few still fighting to give hope for the die-hard fan. Yes, I'm putting die-hard in my Christmas movie pun section. Hello and welcome to the Irish NFL Show's Week 16 preview, brought to you in association with QuimBet. We know it's Christmas when we have NFL football to look forward to on Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, to keep us company with all action for us to look forward to. Ciaran O'Donovan previewed tonight's Thursday night football matchup between the Rams and Seahawks. Huge game there on Michael Sean Dugar of The Athletic. Check that out if you're watching us live on on Facebook, IrishNFLShow.com, or on Twitter. Thank you very much for joining us. But for now, as the world awaits presents from the North Pole, I am graced by the presence of North Dublin's Brian O'Leary and North Florida's Ciaran Boyle to preview the remaining 15 games. Gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be with you. And we start on Saturday night, our time, Saturday afternoon, your time, of course, Ciaran, as the Eagles travel to Landover, Maryland, in what is a rematch of last year's NFC Championship game. But unlike last year, I think this seems like a bit less of a challenge for the Eagles, Ciaran. And the Eagles, let's be fair about this, they had an 0-3 run coming into last week's game against the Raiders. The Raiders, were sort of gifted them a reset game to sort of get things back going. And they will really want to make sure that they sort of get the business done here pretty early and try to move themselves closer towards winning the NFC East.
Yeah, and the Raiders are the get right of all get right games. I mean, all the doom and gloom that surrounded Philly over the last, probably month or so is just vanished away with the dog walk of the Raiders. The Raiders are a terrible team. We know that. They're not going, they're not competitive at all right now. But, the Eagles
Commanders, lads.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm talking about Commanders. Sorry.
They're the Commanders and Raiders.
Let's get back to the Commanders. So, the Commanders are, they're not going to be much of a trouble for this Eagles team. I mean, the Eagles offense got back on track. Hurts as usual, 175 yards, you had a bunch of touchdowns. You got the rest of the team involved. But the Eagles are looking past this game. They're not looking at this Commanders team as any much of any kind of a challenge. Daniels is done for the rest of the year. They're putting him in storage. Obviously, Ertz is done, and they're just lacking weapons across the field. Krosky Merritt is probably, and scary Terry McLaurin's probably about all they got, and the Eagles will have more than enough on defense to take care of those two. It's for me, it's the Eagles. They're just looking to put points on this team and just get more confidence and get more reps for this offense, and maybe get the ball over to AJ Brown a little bit more and pat his ego as we go into the business end. They're looking past this game. I mean, I know they still have the Commanders to play before the end of the season. They got the Bills coming up just after Christmas as well. But the division's pretty much wrapped up. The line is only -6. I think it should be double that at least. I think the Commanders are shutting things down until next year, and this Eagles team will have very little difficulty. There'll be a lot of Saquon early, and they'll probably pull him in the third quarter because there's a lot bigger games coming down the track.
Brian, it's interesting with the Eagles because they've been to New York and they lost to the Giants. They've been to Dallas and they've lost to the Cowboys. This is, of course, the third road game they have to play against divisional opponents. We see this all the time in the league. Divisional opponents can spring a surprise. Not saying that those two results were necessarily a surprise in the context of when they happen here, but if the Commanders were to win this one, it will be a bit of a shock, and the Eagles still need to come in focus into this matchup here.
I'm glad you threw that one into the mix, Shane, because that's the last time the New York Giants won a football game. And me and Ciaran were not. Who would have thought that night we'd be walking out of MetLife, seeing probably arguably the last victory of the season? I'm not going to go down that road, Shane, and I don't think many people will in terms of, a Commanders victory and there's a shutout this year on the road for the Eagles. I think Ciaran's on the right track here. I think the Eagles have been inconsistent. We know that over the course of the season, and they're winning the division by default. They haven't played at the level in which we've seen last year. However, this is kind of feels to me like the next few weeks are usually significant for this team, and not necessarily because they are in the sweepstakes to go to the Super Bowl. People may think, okay, they get into the race, maybe they've got a real opportunity. I think most of us would say they're going to be up against it this year, but they've got to put some form together going into the playoffs. We've seen teams similar to the Eagles. Actually, the Eagles 2 years ago, they went into the Bucs and they were taken care of because the form had dipped at that stage of the season. They got it right last weekend against a very poor Raiders team. We joked about they are they as bad as the Commanders? Probably not. The Commanders will probably give them a test, but I think they've got to find a way, and I think they've got to be comprehensive in putting this victory away. And I think they need to get their own game be more effective. Saquon Barkley's not been at the level in which we saw last year. I don't know if it's an inconsistency of the line, whether he's just not playing at the same level, whether he's banged up with injuries and we're not really aware of it. Jalen Hurts looks completely off this season. Even that LA game 2 weeks ago on the Monday Night Football, numerous turnovers. He just doesn't seem to be reading the situation correctly the way we've seen last year. But in saying that, and we've been here before with a team like the Eagles, if they find a way to get into the playoffs and can come into the playoffs with a bit of form, they're a dangerous outfit. I think they need to run the table to really put themselves in a position to be going into the playoffs with confidence. They will get that home game in the playoffs, but the way this season is played out, it wouldn't be against the realms of possibility someone goes and beats them. They'll win this game. They'll probably win it comfortably, but it's an eye opener to see how they go about this game at the weekend.
Yeah, I have a funny feeling a lot of people in America will be flicked over to watch Tulane and Ole Miss for a certain chunk of this game. Like you said, I think the Eagles might have this one sewn up pretty early. I mean, it will be the most Philadelphia one for them to have a sort of mini crisis mid-season and to have a quietly good end of season before the playoffs. So for that reason, I think the Eagles will win. But the really big one on Saturday night, guys, is a rematch of a game we saw 2 weeks ago. As the Green Bay Packers go to Chicago to play the Bears. It feels like only 2 weeks ago we were talking about one of the greatest late window games that we've seen in recent times. So much has changed here, especially when it comes to the feeling around the Bears. They felt good even though they came away with a loss in that game at Lambeau. And the Packers are dealing with a lot of injuries here. They're still coming into as 1-point favorites into Soldier Field, Brian. Really difficult to try and put a pin as to what the real difference maker is going to be here. But a lot of it is going to be at the door of Caleb Williams trying to make sure that he performs well in two halves of football and not just the second half, as is the case when they face off against each other 2 weeks ago at Lambeau Field.
Yeah, a huge blow for the Bears in the last couple of hours. It's been confirmed that Dunze is out, and the wide receiver from the last rookie draft, Burden, he's also out. So that's a huge, it's going to be a burden on Caleb Williams, isn't it? Pardon the pun. How he's going to navigate an offensive plan against his Packers team. Like, we're 2 weeks removed from a game which many of us felt that the Bears had there for the taking. Run the ball so effectively towards the back end of the game, and I still question whether they should have done that in that particular fourth round play. It's probably quite some time since we've seen a Bears team really, really put it up to the Packers. I know there's been kind of just one or two games here and there where it looked like the Bears were going to get over the line, and they won that Week 18 game last year where there was nothing on in Green Bay. But this strikes me as something different about the Bears team. This is a huge opportunity to win this to be a game and a half ahead of the ahead of the Packers with 2 games to go. And the Packers right now are slightly reeling from last week's loss because it wasn't just necessarily about the fact that they gave up a double-digit lead and they allowed the Broncos to come back. They've lost Micah Parsons for the season. Will we see that defense step up to the level in which they need to do to kind of cover off what Micah Parsons was doing? I know we've read numerous reports on the fact that, look, the Packers have been in the playoffs the last couple of years without Micah Parsons, but he's become an X factor. He's become a huge difference to this team over the course of the season. And I wonder, is it a monumental blow to this team to lose a player of that magnitude? As well as that, we don't know how fit Watson's going to be. It looks like he's on the right side in terms of he hasn't suffered any long-term prognosis of an injury, but it's still an injury in itself, and the inconsistency for me is still there of whether the Packers can put 4 quarters together. How many times have we really seen that this season? They've won games because they've had really explosive plays. Thanksgiving, the last game against the Bears. Last week, Ciaran O'Donnell, was frustrated with the fact that they started out well, got sloppy, came back again. I'm going Bears. I think the tide is turning in this division. I think it's the Bears division to win. I think there's bigger games still ahead for the Bears because they've got to go to 49ers. They've got to try and knock off the Lions in the last game of the season, to secure that division. But Saturday night, Soldier Field, I think this is arguably one of the biggest games we've had in years in this division, and I think the Bears are going to come out the right side of it.
Yeah, it's probably one of the biggest games we've had in Chicago in a very long time as well, in terms of just what it means, not only in terms of like this so-called great rivalry that we always talk about, but of course in terms of how the power shift in this division. And well, I'm looking at this one and I'm actually quite worried about the Packers, not only because of their inconsistency, but if you'd actually just look at, and there's a lot of areas in which they're they just don't look set up. I mean, their defense gave up over 300 yards to Bo Nix last week at 4 touchdowns. And that's, with the caveat that Bo Nix played a very good game last week. What I would argue is probably the best game of his career, definitely the best game of his NFL career, I thought, in terms of how well Bo Nix played against the Packers last week. But still, giving up over 300, they didn't get a sack, they didn't get an interception. The Broncos were 4-4 in the red zone last week. They allowed Nix to run it a lot. The run defense is better than their pass defense, but this is coming up against a Bears team whose pass offense seems to be getting a little bit sharper every week. As we saw last week, Caleb Williams, the first time this season, has been over 60% in terms of his pass completion rate. His accuracy is just getting a little bit better and better as we keep going on. I think 112 QB rating against the Browns last week. And I know, look, it's the Browns, but it's that Browns defense, which is still a pretty good unit to try and flex your muscles against. You look at the injuries that we're looking at in Green Bay. Watson has been limited in practice. Matthew Golden seems to be have a problem with his wrist. Savion Williams has a problem with his foot. Tavion Wicks a problem with his ankle. Josh Weil and Jaden Reed have other problems as well. And Zach Tom, the offensive line, has not been participating as well. There's a really, really banged up feel to this Packers team. And look, the Bears, as you outlined already, Brian, have a lot of physical games to come up ahead of them between going to Santa Clara and then facing against the Lions in the last game of the week. This is going to be a physical game as well. But the Bears are 5-1 at home. DeAndre Swift has been consistent. Kyle Monungai we've seen as being more of a breakout star. They can get the run game going. They can get the pass game going. Their offense has been able to put up over 24 points in 5 of the last 7 games, and they're pretty efficient in the red zone. And I think that their game planning will be pretty efficient as well. So I really like the Bears in this one. I said that 2 weeks ago, but I was in Lambeau Field with different conditions, and the Bears still play pretty well there. I think they will have the edge here. So I'm going against the Packers here, even though they are coming into this as 1-point favorites, according to those in Vegas. Ciaran.
Yeah, war of attrition here, injuries on both sides. I'm picking the Bears purely because they're at home, and based on the performance last week. Caleb had a real nice game. It was good to see, so I'm picking the Bears.
Sunday, now we move on to an 6 o'clock window. The Buffalo Bills, who just come off a really big momentum swing victory in Foxborough, Massachusetts, now travel to Cleveland, Ohio, as they face the Browns. I'm looking at this one, and look, we could talk about Shedeur and to the extent to which that he's trying to play for this job. We could talk about the fact that the Cleveland Browns defense is pretty strong, and Myles Garrett is obviously, the main storyline behind that is how many sacks is he going to get to try and build up towards his way, or is having a record that maybe nobody might be able to beat depending on how the season goes here. But I think the important thing for the Bills is that after coming up against the Patriots last week, and they have a couple of difficult challenges coming ahead between now and the end of the year, they still need to keep pressure on. I don't foresee them going in to Cleveland and dropping this one. Josh Allen and the run game as last week, when they got going, they had that 5 touchdown stream. They managed to get things going in a way that they were able to click, that it wasn't just Josh Allen doing everything by himself. It was that kind of complementary offense that was able to pick out the right situations at the right time. The run game worked, the offensive line worked, the passing game worked. And I just, sometimes with these teams, when they get into this December mode, they really start to click into gear here. And I think the Bills are good for their 10-point favorite tags going in to Cleveland here. Ciaran.
I think this a little different to the Eagles-Commanders game. I think this line better reflects the outcome of this challenge. I mean, the Browns, we talk every week. I mean, there's nothing on offense. I mean, the last 3 games, they've totaled 40 points, and 29 of those was against the Titans. So I don't think the Bills are scared in any way of this offense. The only thing for the Bills is going to be complacence. They're going into a Browns team that's, Garrett's going for that sack record. We'll have to wait and see how much that D wants to keep fighting, because they've been slogging since early September, and there's nothing to play for right now. We're getting into late December. How much are they going to show up? I'm concerned for the Bills in one regard, and that's their ability to kind of string, consecutive good performances together. They have 4 games where they've scored less than 20 points, and at this stage of the game, or even at this stage of the season, it's about getting hot. It's about firing on all cylinders. It's about finishing December strong and going into January with good momentum. And obviously the Bills are a December team. They're, Allen is a superstar in December. So with all that said, I don't think the Browns are going to pose much of a threat to this Bills team. They're looking forward probably to the Eagles game after this. Shedeur had a nightmare last week. This offense for the Browns can't do much. It's Isaiah Bond, Jerry Jeudy, and Judkins on the ground, but it's going to really come down to how much the Bills want to run the ball and how much the Browns D can stop them. I'm sure Garrett will get a sack or 2 and it'll look great, but it's another year for him of just padding his own personal stats as opposed to the team stats. So the only other thing I can think of for the Bills is maybe trying to work out this passing game, because at this stage it's Cook and Allen on the ground, and do we have a lot of faith in Khalil Shakir or Keon Coleman even to stretch that field? So that's probably almost like a scrimmage for the Bills, maybe. The Browns, they're a bad team. And it just remains to be seen what kind of defense shows up for the Browns. But this will be an easy win for the Bills.
Brian?
From Soldier Field to Buffalo Soldier, Shane, it's a Bills victory. This is a huge part of the season now, and where they may have taken teams lightly, like the Dolphins early in the season and lost, and the Falcons, and even the Texans, this game on the road won't be a problem. They will win this game comprehensively. Bills win.
What the LA Chargers and Dallas Cowboys have in common is they were both complicit in the killing of the Kansas City Chiefs. The Cowboys putting the knife in Thanksgiving, and the Chargers giving it the final twist on Sunday just gone. The Chargers now go to Dallas. Dallas 2-point favorites in this one. The Chargers very much in the hunt for a wildcard spot in the AFC. The Cowboys have dropped off in pace the last couple of weeks, but they're not completely out of the woods yet. Brian, how do you see this game going?
This is a tricky one, isn't it? It's kind of It's kind of reflective of what the line is for QuinnBet. Like, Cowboys are slight favourites, which I found a little bit bizarre. Bearing in mind, the Chargers for me have kind of evolved over the course of the season to a Harbaugh team. They are now winning games that we would have expected them to lose in the past. Even last week, I felt that was a game which the Chiefs would win. Maybe with the exception of that Jaguars game where they got completely blown out on the road, and a lot of people have them favoured to win that game. That's probably been the one game this season where we've looked at them and go, is that the Chargers of old? The Cowboys, I can't work them out, Shane, because I was reasonably high and making a bit of a run. I thought they'd go into Detroit and put it up to them. They did. And then last weekend on a Sunday Night Football, when everyone, including ourselves, had all selected the Cowboys to win, they lay an egg and allow JJ McCarthy to go up and down the field throughout the night. I think inevitably what we've come to taking for granted now is this Cowboys defense is just not good this season. Yes, there's been some bright spots bringing in the Quinn Williams in the trade. Is a fantastic player, and in the long term, he probably will be a great addition. And he kind of got things rolling slightly for a couple of weeks, but what I think we've seen is they've transitioned back to what we've seen earlier in the season, which is a team and a secondary that just can't cover receivers. And in fairness to the Chargers, in their own way, Keelan Allen's done well in the return there. McConkey's a great player. Vidal has stepped up when they've had injuries to running backs. Like, they've got all the players there. The rookie tight end has had a fantastic season. For me, it's about, does Justin Herbert hold up? Does this arm? You kind of feel like, yeah, it's held up for the last 2 weeks, and they've overcome it on the Monday Night Football against the Eagles last week. But you have to be considered, as a Chargers fan, that he's playing with this injury, which is not really fruitful for a long, in terms of what you believe is going to happen over the course of the season. The Chargers need this game really badly. They've got to go in. They're on the cusp of making the playoffs again. And for the Cowboys, I know Jerry Jones has come out this week and said we're not going to tank. I don't think they're very much in the sweepstakes for tanking in the sense of getting into the top 5, but obviously clearly their season is over. They'll probably put up some high numbers. It feels like a really high scoring type of game, but I think the Chargers need it more, and I think the Chargers come out the right side of it. So it feels to me like a late drive field goal kind of game, but the Chargers get out the right side of it. Big win for the Chargers.
One of my favourite stats of this game is if you actually look at the NFL thing, the playoff picture, to say that if the Cowboys win this game, they still only have a 2% chance of making the playoffs, which is just kind of a funny state of affairs as to where they're in. But for the Chargers, Ciaran, it's interesting. Justin Herbert is playing with that broken left hand, as Ciaran was saying, and their offensive line has the highest pressure rate allowed of 2025. If they let pressure get on top of him, he could be really in danger of either making mistakes or getting himself seriously hurt. Now, that Cowboys defense might be the ones to put it up for it. I'm sure they'll definitely give it a go here in Dallas.
Yeah, and it's what's weird is, the Chargers have been winning in spite of themselves almost. Herbert's come up against much tougher teams and come out on top. With that hand injury, and like Brian said, this Cowboys defense is it's starting to regress. They had a little bit of a bump when they got Logan Wilson and Quinn Williams, but they've kind of regressed back to where they were the first 4, 5, 6 weeks of the season. But this Chargers team, you want to kind of put them down, and you want to say, they're not up to it, but they've won 6 of the last 7, and they're allowing an average of 20.3 points per game, and they should lean on the run game, because what we've seen the last couple of games is a limited offense, kind of vertically. But what they've done is it's been Herbert and a cloud of dust, and Herbert and a cloud of dust, and they've just been grinding out yards and grinding out performances, not lighting up the scoreboard in any way. That's the thing. If this turns into a shootout early, I can't see the Chargers keeping pace with this Cowboys offense. They've had what they've done in the last couple of games, especially against the Chiefs. They just used these long drives with Herbert just grinding out yards just to chew the clock up. They've run the ball 110 times and passed 75 in the last 3 games. So that shows you the kind of limited options they have out wide. Aranda Gadsden, son of the former players, he's been doing good. Obviously, McConkey's a weapon. But I can only see the Chargers kind of keeping on the ground against this very suspect, like a lot of teams in the league, very suspect run D from the Cowboys. But for me, the Cowboys have too much on offense. When you kind of look at both teams and how they stack up on offense, the Cowboys for me have got too much. And Dak has been playing, any other season people will be talking about how well Dak's been playing. He's been let down by the defense. The O-line has definitely showed up for him in the last month. But, I mean, Dak has been, what you need from him, just spraying the ball out left, right, and center, working with his legs, using those 2 power wide receivers that he has. And I think that's what's going to come down to. I just think with Pickens and Lamb, that's just too much for this Chargers team to overcome. I think the Chargers will keep it tight the first half. But, I mean, with this team, again, Cowboys got nothing to lose. They'll want to put a show on for Jerry. Again, players playing for their future careers with the Cowboys. I can tighten it up, maybe putting 30 points, and the Chargers kind of struggling to keep with them. They've done it. They've kept a lot of teams in check the last month or so. But I think when this Cowboys team, especially the offense, when they get going, there's not a huge amount of teams that can stick with them, notwithstanding last week. But I think this Cowboys offense is going to have too much for them. And I think the Chargers, I don't want to call it luck. They have rode their luck a lot in the last month, but I think it kind of stops. And I think the Cowboys are going to win at home.
The luck stops here. Yeah, I believe the Cowboys are going to win that game as well. We move on to a match of the NFC South. What do these teams have in common? The Buccaneers and the Panthers have both lost to the Saints in the last 2 weeks. The Buccaneers also lost to the Falcons last week as well. It seems like neither of these teams really want to try and take grasp of this division. Well, luckily they get to face off against each other twice in the last 2 weeks for us to really find out who gets a chance to win the NFC South. What I find interesting about this particular matchup here, the Bucs are coming into Carolina as 3-point favorites. Kind of understandable considering that Baker Mayfield has a 5-0 record against Carolina in his career, 4 of those wins coming as a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. An interesting stat. The Bucs offense wasn't really at fault as much as their defense was for that loss against Atlanta on Thursday Night Football last week. They were 3 for 3 in the red zone. Now, Baker, in fairness, his completion rate wasn't great. His completion rate actually hasn't been great in 4 of the last 5 games. He's been taking a lot of sacks, and Bucky Irving, as a running back, hasn't been getting a lot of bang for his buck. He's been, I think, in the 3.8 yards per carry mark in the last 3 games, which definitely, doesn't give you a hell of a lot of confidence that the Buccaneers offense is going to be the side of the ball that's going to take control of this game. But I've even less confidence, and I'm usually, somebody who is banging the drums for the Panthers and generally being quite high on what they've been able to do. But I realized that in a lot of key areas, this is the problem against New Orleans last week. The defense may be able to hold up, their offensive line may be able to hold up, but they're relying too much on that aspect of their game, and they're being too conservative in what they're doing. It really makes a thing as to whether Bryce Young really is the answer, because anytime they've won sort of with him, it hasn't been because he's been explosive. It's because they've found a way to make him serviceable with other aspects of the game being rigid and being able to work effectively. I mean, they rarely pass or do play action plays on first down. They don't go for deep targets unless they really have to. They scored under 18 points in 4 of their last 6 games. I just have less trust in them to go and try and put up the points that you probably need against a Baker Mayfield team who, look, I think matches up well against this team. That loss against the Falcons, look, when you talk about these divisional games, you have to step back and ask, these are teams that know each other intimately. The difference in a lot of these games is actually matchups and the fact that some teams just play well against other teams. The Saints have always put in good games against the Panthers, as they did last week, and got a win. The Falcons have beaten the Buccaneers 3 times in the last 4 games that they played, hence why they bet the Buccaneers last week. The Buccaneers generally tend to beat the Panthers. I think they're the better team overall. They're the better offense overall. And neither of these defenses is strong enough to make me think that they can fully take control of the game. The Panthers may be slightly stronger on their side because they got a lot of sacks against the Saints last week, considering that the Buccaneers, let the Falcons go 4 for 4 in the red zone. But who are you putting your money on? You're putting your money on Baker and co. to be a bit more aggressive, be that more swashbuckling style, and play the kind of offensive attacking football that makes you deserving of a spot in the playoffs, which I just don't expect to come from Bryce Young. Excuse me. So for that reason, I'm going for the Buccaneers to win this one. Ciaran.
Brutal weekend for both teams last week. Just falling over each other, getting to the finish line. Huge implications for not just the end of the season, but next season too. Todd Bowles, his future, if they take a nosedive, that could be it for him. I mean, we saw him having a meltdown at the podium last week. He's obviously furious with this team. We saw Mike Evans furious in the tunnel because they knew they just missed a huge opportunity. I had the Panthers getting 8 wins at the start of the season, and I'm still going to stick with that. I think with their finish of the season, they got the Bucs again, and they have the Seahawks, so that's a tough end of the season. I do like this Bucs team to finish strong. I think Baker's a great rallier. He's gritty. He's the kind of player to rally this team around. They got the weapons. I mean, they got the run game. They got Tucker, Bucky Irvin, and Rashad White. That's three guys who can run the rock. And obviously they got Ibuka, Mike Evans is back, Godwin is back. So, I mean, they got much more weapons, much more potent weapons for me than the Panthers have. I think the Panthers have just about maxed out what they had this season. The other question for Canales is, what do we do with Bryce Young? I've said it before, I don't see him as a franchise quarterback. And if the Panthers are going to kind of build on the momentum that they've had this year with, again, solid free agency signings, great draft, they're obviously a huge amount better than they were last year. They're not going to want to regress next year. I don't think Bryce Young is the guy that's going to keep him moving and get him to the next stage. So, for him, he's going to want to put on a huge performance the last 3 games and show Canales that he's got something to prove and he's got something in the tank that can bring this team forward. I think for me, I think the fury of Bowles last week, I mean, you never really see him that animated, but I think Baker is the kind of guy that's going to rally this team. He's been in positions like this before, especially with Oklahoma in college. He brought that team up at the scruff of its neck. They beat Ohio State in a huge game, so he's used to the big game where they got to get the big win. And I think with the weapons I outlined for Tampa, I think they have too much for this Panthers team. Panthers team that is, I don't say they've overreached, but I think they've just about kind of maxed out their ability for this season. And I think that Tampa D, especially Vita Vea, is going to just galvanize the rest of that defense. I mean, the other thing with the Panthers is since October 19th, their problem is since October 19th against the Jets, it's win-loss, 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 and the loss against the Saints. So they just can't get anything together. And I really fear for them right now. I think Young's in for a torrid time. I know it's at home for the Panthers, but I really see the Bucs pulling away from this. But probably a 6-point win when all is said and done.
Brian.
I'd oppose the both of you. I think the Panthers are on the right side of this. I think as inconsistent as they've been at home, they can be a very high-scoring, expansive offense. And I think the Bucs defense, from what I've seen over the last few weeks, has been a real concern. I will go with the Panthers. I don't think necessarily it's an upset either. Panthers to win.
Ooh, he's bringing the spice. Right, we're going to finish off with a couple of quick picks before we take a break. Chiefs. Yes, the Chiefs are in the quick pick section. They're going to Tennessee. Let's see what Gardner Minshew could do. I'm backing the Chiefs to win this one. Right.
I think Cam Ward and the Titans turn over the Chiefs in this one. They played well offensively over the last few weeks. I think it continues. They win this game. Gardner Minshew doesn't do the business for the Chiefs. Titans.
Stranger things have happened, I guess. Ciaran?
Yeah, even with Minshew, the Titans are garbage. I'll still take the Chiefs.
And then we have the Cincinnati Bengals traveling to the Miami Dolphins, who will not be playing Tua Tagovailoa, but the Tagovailoa era has come to an end. Aha, that's a terrible pun I've been saving for 3 days. I tell you, when I look at this one, right, I mean, there's comments coming in now about from when Joe Burrow, he had another press conference who seems like he just doesn't know whether he wants to keep playing football in the future. And, you know, we're backed by Quinn Bet. I'm betting on Quinn Ewers. Give me the Miami Dolphins. Brian?
I was on the Dolphins until they made this change this week. I think the Bengals will come out the right side of this game. Bengals.
And Ciaran?
As someone who watched Ewers at college, he is not a NFL level quarterback. Give me Cincy.
Fair enough. Right, we'll take a quick break.